Hello and welcome. This is Michele Christensen of One Noteworthy Life, and this video is a recording of an introduction to the Getting Things Done system that I did for a private group. They were kind enough to provide me with a copy of the presentation, so here it is for you. This is a short overview of the whole system, and if you want more information, I'm doing a read-through on my channel in a series of live streams. A link to that playlist, as well as a link to the Getting Things Done book, will be in the description if you need them. So let's get into the video.
And I would like to introduce you to Michele Christiansen. So, hi Michele, sorry we can't see you on the camera just yet, but I can see you wave in just 1 second. So today's final presenter is coming to us live from Los Angeles in California. Michele is going to give us an introduction to the system called Getting Things Done, which is described in the book by the same name. Our goal for today is to give you enough understanding of the potential of GTD so you can decide if you want to learn more and give you some concrete ideas you can implement straight away. Michele is a YouTube content creator on her channel One Noteworthy Life. Her interests are goal setting, personal organisation, GTD, or the Getting Things Done system, and also digital tools such as Microsoft OneNote. She also hosts live conversations with guest presenters. She considers herself a lifelong learner, and while not learning something new, you can find her working on her fixer-up a house, which she does talk about quite a bit in her live streams, riding bicycles, or hanging out with her husband and 2 dogs at their home in and around Los Angeles. So personally, I found Michele's YouTube channel when I was trying to be better at using OneNote. And since then, I've subscribed to her YouTube channel along with nearly 6,000 other people and joined her Facebook groups, which are really active in helping other people if they've got any questions. I've asked Michele to be here today because the tips she's given through her YouTube channel and her blogs has really changed my life to be better organised and focused at doing stuff when I need to do it. And the best thing I find about Michele's content on YouTube compared to others is that Michele's is really engaging presentation style, and she's creating it because she wants to learn herself and let others learn from her and open that conversation rather than trying to sell something like a training course or whatever. So I'm really looking forward to this session with Michele.
So thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. That was so great, and I'm so glad. It's always so nice to know that something I've created has helped someone, so that's just so great. Thank you. So can we go to slide 1? Is that up?
Yep, here it is.
Okay, awesome. So the book Getting Things Done was first published in 2001, and then it was updated in 2015. And on your screen right now, you'll see the cover of the updated version. And I do suggest that you get the updated version if you don't have a copy yet, because it has been updated quite a bit. And I think it's more useful for the time we live in. Among other things, the new version has been adapted to be more applicable to people in different walks of life, whereas the original was geared more towards C-suite executives like CEOs or CFOs. There's been a lot of updating on the idea that we have more digital technology and electronic ways of communicating, and this idea that we're always on and always connected. Another addition that I really like is that this new version includes some cognitive science. And even without that, the system made a lot of sense for me, but the science adds just a layer of validity for me. Okay, can we go to slide 2, please? All right. So these are some of the ways that I think GTD is unique among productivity or task management systems. So the first thing is that GTD starts with getting control of all the things coming at you day to day, which then allows you to have some breathing room to think about bigger goals. So can we go to slide 3? So most systems start with a top-down approach. So you start with your values, your goals, your big life vision, and that kind of thing. But if your life looks like this and things, it's hard to imagine bigger goals like getting involved in community or learning another language or moving to a new house. So that's something I think is unique, is that it starts with getting that low-level control and then goes to the bigger picture. So we can go back to slide 2, please. So the second thing that I think makes GTD unique is the idea of the next action. GTD defines the next action as the next physical, visible activity that needs to be engaged in order to move the current reality of this thing toward completion. So next actions are what you actually manage. They're the day-to-day small steps forward. And it's the only way to actually do a project. So you can't plan a party, but you can do something like make a list of 10 venues to check out, or to call your local pub and see if they can host it. Putting together a series of next actions will get your party planned, but none of those next actions is actually plan the party. So the third thing that is unique is being able to be used in so many different circumstances. So as I mentioned earlier, the book was updated in 2015 in part to reflect that we have a lot more electronic communication in both volume and different ways to communicate. But the basic process is still the same. So it doesn't really matter if we go back to 2001 and it's paper and emails versus now when it's more electronic. It's how you deal with those inputs and make meaning out of them. That's what has stayed consistent and what makes the system applicable in so many circumstances. So the last thing is that GTD isn't about just cramming more and more tasks into your day or being more efficient with your tasks, like things like batch scheduling your errands or listening to a podcast while you're folding laundry. So these are great tips, but they can only take you so far. You won't find peace and fulfillment in your life because you're a tiny bit more efficient with your tasks. And somebody else might pick totally different things about GTD that they think are unique. So this is my take, and this is not official to GTD. So let's go to slide 4, please. So early on in the GTD book, there are some pretty bold promises made, and I wanted to talk about them here so that you have a sense of what GTD may be able to do for you. So promise number 1 is mind like water. And David Allen describes this as the state of relaxed control using this phrase, mind like water. And he learned this in martial arts training. And I love this phrase so much because it explains so much with just a few words. And David Allen explains mind like water like this. When you throw a rock into a pond, the water responds perfectly and predictably to the force of the throw and the size of the rock. So, big rock, big reaction, small rock, small reaction. The water does this without effort or thinking and returns to its ready or still state as soon as the event is over. So a mind like water is still and ready to react in just the right way and in the correct proportion to whatever is thrown at it. Second promise is stress-free productivity. This is the book's subtitle, so needless to say, there's a lot of discussion on this. But one of the problems that this system seeks to address is the pervasive, nagging feeling that you may not know of everything you should know of, you're not doing the right thing at the right time, fear of things slipping through the cracks, and it's like this constant nagging background feeling. And it may actually keep you from being present when you're doing things like watching your favorite sport or playing with your child or working or walking your dog or whatever. So that's one of the problems that GTD promises to help improve. So promise number 3 is a clear head no matter what or how much you have on your plate. And this one really grabbed me because for years I have thought that my problem was too much to do, like too much coming in, it builds up faster than I can tackle things. And as I've opened my mind to this possibility that this idea of too much to do may not be the problem, I also realize that while I have my unique situation, so do other people. A CEO is certainly busy. Parents and caregivers are busy, working students are busy. So lots and lots of people have too much to do. They're very busy for lots of different reasons. And so this idea that I could still find calm and relaxed control, even though it feels like I have far too much to do, has given me just so much optimism and motivation to move forward with GTD. So can we go to slide 5, please? So on this slide, we see the 5 phases of the GTD workflow. So phase 1 is capture, and this is collecting everything that comes your way that may grab a piece of your attention and making sure that it's in your trusted system and that you'll come back and process or clarify it at some point in the future. So there's just 2 things I want to point out, which is that some things come to us in an inbox. So things like your emails, your voicemails, your text messages are already collected for you in an inbox. Other things come at you from random directions, so you need to corral them in some sort of holding place. The other thing is we can have internal and external inputs. So an internal input might be something like, oh, I need to change that light bulb. An external input might be, your internet provider says that your credit card's expiring and they need the new number. So the second GTD workflow phase is clarify, and clarify means to figure out what something is and what you're going to do with that thing. So I describe clarify as a quick and descriptive, and being just a little bit descriptive can help you make a decision about it. And an example of this is one of the questions we ask during the clarify phase is, what is this? And the answer to that, so as an example, we could say, well, this is an invitation. And if we just go a tiny step further, we can say, oh, this is an invitation to my friend's wedding that I've known about for months and I'm definitely going to. And that, when we go to step 3, which is organize, we put that thing where it belongs. And if we've taken that little bit extra of giving it a description, it makes it easier to figure out where it belongs. We will get more into this with the workflow diagram. That's our next slide. But as you build your GTD system, you'll be building holding places for things that make sense for you and that have a clear definition of what belongs there. So the fourth phase is to reflect, and this is where you make deeper or more consequential decisions about things. Phase 2, clarify, is a very quick judgment about whether or not this thing should even be taken any further. In this phase where we're reflecting, we might be asking deeper questions like, do I want to undertake this? How much work should I put into it? What should my budget be? And this is often done during a weekly review. We will talk a little bit more about the weekly review, but it's a weekly session, or weekly-ish in my case, where you review all of your open or incomplete projects and make sure that it's still something that you want to be doing, should be doing, that you haven't gotten stuck, that you haven't stop working on something for whatever reason, and that kind of thing. The final phase, number 5, is to engage, and this is the step where we actually do things. Once you've gone through all these steps, it will probably create next actions, and engage is where we do that thing. And I do want to point out that these phases happen at different times throughout your day, your week, and even your life. It's not like we pick up one thing out of the inbox and go through all 5 phases and then go on to the next item. There's an example in the book where David Allen describes returning from a business trip and then distributing to his team and organizing the material that he collected and processed or clarified while he was on the road. So there are times when you're collecting, then there are times when you're processing or clarifying. And earlier we mentioned the weekly review, and even if you're not doing it weekly, that's when you would do a lot of your reflection. And then there's engaging, which is when you actually do your work or handle the things that have come your way. So let's go to slide number 6, please. In case it's not clear, I want to make sure I point out that this diagram comes from the David Allen Company and the Getting Things Done system. This is not my diagram. I downloaded it from the American Library Association, and it's also available for download from the Getting Things Done site. And I have, in the links for this presentation, there's 3 different options for downloading this diagram. So this is the simplest version of it, but there are some more colorful and more enhanced versions as well if they're more to your liking. So this diagram is often presented as GTD, like by itself. And yes, it is definitely a critical component of GTD. It doesn't represent the entire system or philosophy by itself. What this diagram does is walk you through how to process a single piece of incoming input that has come into your life. And I think the most accurate way to describe this diagram is that it's the clarify and organize steps of the 5 phases. And what I think is so beautiful about this diagram is that it walks you through a series of concrete questions, and in the end, each piece of input will land in only one of 8 places, which is kind of amazing. And if you're looking at the slide, I have the 8 spots on the perimeter of the diagram marked with a blue arrow, and that's the kind of final destination for all of your inputs. And like any diagram you're not familiar with, this probably seems like a lot to go through for each piece of incoming stuff that comes into your life, but it gets easier and faster over time. And also, as you build out your system, the places into which you sort things become really clear and well defined, so that over time the organizing step becomes more similar to putting like all the blue stuff in the blue bucket and the red stuff in the red bucket. As you practice processing your inputs over time, you'll also probably see that most of it is a repeat of something that you've seen before. So you're not reinventing the wheel and rethinking every single item each time you go through this. So to go through the diagram, we start at the top, which is incoming stuff. As we described in the capture phase, we collect all the incoming stuff into an inbox or some sort of holding place. And then when it comes time to process or clarify all of these collected items, we use this diagram and go through the inbox one thing at a time. So the very first question is, what is it? And so I mentioned this a bit earlier, and like I said, I like to add a little bit of description to it because it makes the next question easier to answer. So the next question, moving down a level, is it actionable? And if you're looking at the slide, I have no circled in red and yes circled in green. And so this question, is it actionable, gets at whether or not there is something you can do or want to do, should do, or are willing to do with this item. In the case of the invitation to your friend's wedding, it is actionable. We need to send a reply and maybe some other things like buy a gift, book a hotel room, etc. But what I really like about this question is that there are only two answers, yes and no. So I want to go through the no answers first because I think those are more clear. So if something is not actionable, it only goes into one of three places: the trash, your someday maybe file, or reference. And you'll find these three places on the top right perimeter of the workflow diagram. So trash is pretty obvious. The second option, someday maybe, creates a place to hold things for which no action is required right now, but that you might want to think about it and you might want to revisit it at a later date. For some things in this someday maybe category, you may want to create a reminder so you look at this item at a specific time in the future. So for example, if you get an event information about something happening in 6 months, you might want to create a reminder for yourself to look at it in 4 months. The final category for non-actionable items is reference. And this is just what it sounds like. You may get something that contains great information, but it just doesn't have any action to take right now. And one of the key things for setting up your reference system is to make sure you can reliably access things when you want them. And this will help you to let go of the item, not to keep it in your brain, and to store it in your trusted system, and you can just stop thinking about it. So that takes care of all of the non-actionable items. So let's cover the items that are actionable. If you determine that something is actionable, there's two things that you want to determine about that. What project or outcome is this related to, if any, and what's the next action? So in GTD, a project is something with more than one action, and you track projects on your project list, which is represented by the clipboard icon at the top left of the perimeter. The project list gets reviewed weekly, or weekly-ish. You store project material together by project, and that's represented by the folder that is second from the top on the left. I guess that should probably be multiple folders for your multiple projects, but that's the idea. So if you get something new incoming that represents a new project, you would add it to your project list. If it's material related to a project, you would store it with the project material. There might be next actions right away, or you might determine next actions later during a weekly review. Now, once you have a defined next action, you have three choices: do, delegate, or defer. And these are the bottom three items on the perimeter of the diagram. So option one, do it. In GTD, there's a rule that if something takes 2 minutes, just do it now. And the rationale behind that is that it would probably take you longer than 2 minutes to get this thing into the right storage location, and then you have to go back and look at it again later when you're ready to do it. So the 2-minute rule can be useful in other ways too, but this is the way it's used in GTD. The second option is to delegate it. So if it takes longer than 2 minutes, ask yourself, am I the right person to do this? And if the answer is no, then delegate it to the right person. And as with your someday maybe items, you might need to give yourself a reminder to follow up with the person to whom you delegated it. And some people like to keep a waiting for list, and that is represented in the bottom right of the perimeter. So the final choice is to defer it. So if the action takes longer than 2 minutes and you are the right person to do it, then you defer acting on it until later. And your trusted system will remind you of that item at an appropriate time. So you could put it on your calendar at a set day and time that you want to tackle this thing, or you may want to just add it to a list of next actions to do as soon as you can get to them. And those represent the bottom items on the perimeter. So hopefully this helps you understand the diagram a little bit. Every piece of stuff that you capture lands in just one of these 8 perimeter spots after you have processed it. So can we go to slide 7, please? So we've covered an overview of GTD and some of the things that make it unique and some of the promises it makes, but I wanted to give you a few standalone tips that you can use whether or not you go any further with GTD. So if you do decide to read or further implement GTD, there's a sentence in the foreword of the book about how this system works best if you do the whole thing, but that it's still really useful when it's applied piece by piece, or even if you just take certain tips that work well for you. So if something from today really grabbed you, jump on it and start using it. If you're going to read the book, the same is true for that. You can feel free to skip around and implement whatever feels exciting to you, and then just come back and do other things later. So my second tip is that tools alone are not the answer. And this one really jumped out at me because many times I have seen a video or an advertisement for a certain tool and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's it. That's the tool that will fix my overwhelm. And there's a discussion in the book about it's not about the tools, it's about how you use them to assist you in decision making. So tools can help you be organized, they can help provide you with information, but they can't solve the problem for you. And in my copy, I wrote a note that said, tools are not the key. Stop looking for the magic tool. If you're just starting GTD, jump in with what you have and let it evolve. So my final tip, and this is kind of more from me, but it's related to GTD, is to create a new place for things as soon as you start looking at them. So as soon as you get a new idea, like, oh, I might want to try rock climbing, or you're starting to think about your vacation plans or a new car, anything like that, create a place to store the material it generates. I find that as soon as I start researching something or thinking about a new project, I start generating things like links, images, articles, maps, videos, and all that, and it really helps to just corral that from the beginning. So can we go to slide 8, please? Okay, so what to do next if you do want to take this further? You can read GTD and start implementing. I do recommend that you get your own copy, either digital or paper, so that you can mark it up and make notes. That's been really helpful to me. And with this particular book, I do think it's really good to implement as you're reading, as opposed to just reading it and letting the words kind of wash over you. And my second tip is to implement one GTD idea that you heard today or elsewhere and just see if you want to do more. The third thing is, if you want to read along with other people, I'm hosting a read along on my channel. So we can go to slide number 9, please. So I've been doing a live stream book discussion going through the GTD section by section. And the idea is that we read the section ahead of time and then use the stream to discuss and share ideas. We're only partway through chapter 2, so you have plenty of time to catch up or just jump in where we are right now. So Clark, I am ready to open it up for questions. You can just go ahead and start reading them to me.
Great, thanks, Michele. Thanks for running through the content of your presentation. I guess just to share my experiences of the Getting Things Done system now that Michele's gone through it all. I kind of taken two particular pieces of it, because I think implementing all of it in one go is probably too much. And just trying to get into some good habits of doing small things really well. So one of it is trying to process all of the input that we have, particularly on email, particularly at work. So I have the 0 inbox rule. So every morning I clear out my inbox and action it based on the rules that we've just gone through. And that 2-minute rule is really helpful. That if you can just get it done, just get it out the way. because if you're processing it at that time, might as well get it done, because then you're not going to context switch later on in the day when you think, oh, I might as well do that email that's come on. And one thing I did share with you on your YouTube channel, Michele, in the comments, I wasn't able to watch the thing, but watch a live stream at the time, was the example I had where I set aside some time to do a particular project work, and so removed all of my distractions. So I closed Microsoft Teams so I didn't get any pop-ups. I closed Outlook so I didn't get any pop-ups for emails, or the temptation of double checking my emails because I see the Outlook icon open. And it was really interesting to see that I'd missed quite some important emails and conversations that were coming in. But actually, I focused really well and got the thing that I wanted to do delivered at that particular time. And it was really interesting to see that people expected a quick response. I don't know if that's just because it's me and I'm too quick to respond in general, or if it was just a culture thing that people are expecting you to ping an email back and reply really quickly. So that was something that I'd taken away on that. So yeah, so the event Q&A should be open. So feel free to. We've got a large number of attendees online, so feel free to ask Michele a question. Michele, I've kind of had two books based on your, and I'll plug them here. And I know I've plugged them before, which is around the getting things done and the bullet journaling. How would you say it would? What's the difference between the two? Because I've recommended the bullet journaling to a few people at work before. Is there a particular difference between the two, or is it, very similar sort of concepts?
I think one of the big differences is in bullet journaling, and for people that don't know what it is, it's a system designed to be used in like a paper notebook, and the idea is to pull away from all the digital tools because paper doesn't have all the same distractions and stuff, and that it has to be simple because it's on paper. But rapid logging is at the heart of the bullet journal system. So you just kind of always have your journal open and you're just making rapid notes all day long. And I think one of the big differences is that in bullet journaling, as you write something down, you put like a little, what's the word, like a mark next to it. So to determine if it's an item to do, if it's an event, if it's just a note or something like that. And to me, that's kind of the capture and the clarify in the same step. And that kind of hung me up because I don't always know, like even if it's an event, like let's say I see an event, a local event advertised, I don't always know if I'm going to go to that or not in that moment. So when I write it down, for me, I would rather capture it and then clarify it later, like what I'm going to do about it. So that was something that just didn't quite work for me with the bullet journal system. It felt sometimes I would get distracted trying to figure out what this thing was as I was writing it down, as opposed to like really quick capture with GTD, and then you have a designated time later to go back and decide what it is.
Great, thanks for sharing the differences between the two. A question that someone asked pre-event when I was kind of publicising your attendance was that they have they've been reading the book, get GTD, and been following the steps, but they get so much input that their clarify step and their weekly review, it's just getting to a point of it being too much. I haven't read the book to the end yet. Is there anything either from your experience or that's in the book around how people can manage that just when they just get too much input?
There's a few things, and I've been watching a lot of David Allen videos too, so I'm not sure what comes from where, but one of the things I think that I've heard him talk about and that I've begun to experience is this concept of lowering your commitment levels. Like, I think until you get that project list and start reviewing it, it's really common to not really have a good grasp on what you have committed to and to be overcommitted without even realizing it. So that's one thing I think, is to get a handle on how much you're committed to. And what has happened, at least for me, is I'm realizing when I got my project list together recently and started reviewing it, there was a bunch of things on there that were just stalled because I don't have time to work on them because I'm overcommitted, and that'll change over time. But now that I'm clear on that, like I get things and I'm like, that's an automatic no, because I know I don't have space right now. So I'm getting just like lightning fast with turning things down because I know I don't have time for it. I'm also looking at some of the inputs that I can turn off from the outside, like, just junk mail, junk emails, things that I don't need to read, that, things that get sent to me that I don't need to read, or social media posts. So I'm trying to decrease those external inputs. And I think too, the processing gets a lot faster. Like I'm noticing that as I'm processing things, it's just like the more you practice it, the quicker it gets. Like I was mentioning, a lot of the stuff tends to repeat over time. Like if you think about something like an invitation, there's only so many things you can do with it. Either, you can say yes or no, you can put it aside and know that you've got some research to do on it. But the next time you get an invitation, you already know what to do with it because you've done it once. And most of the stuff I get is a repeat. Only like maybe a small percentage of it is new or unique. So hopefully that's, helpful.
Yeah, I do find it helps to just in life in general to try and avoid too many distractions from social media and the like, but they always do tend to they're like one of those like gaming machines that like flash at you in the side, and as
Yes.
soon as you see it, how many times do we all end up looking at something that's like a post from, let's say, my family, and then ultimately you go down the right deep rabbit hole of following, links and content, and actually you end up half an hour later realizing what have I just wasted all that time on. So yeah,
And
so it's
it's,
good
yeah,
to
it's fine if
remove.
you want to do that. Like if you set aside time because you enjoy doing, like, that's totally fine. But what the trap you mentioned isn't good, because you're not really consciously doing it to enjoy it. It's just kind of this trap. And I think that, the social media algorithms are designed to keep you on and keep you looking at things. And I also have noticed that the advertisers seem to be getting more and more clever. Like I'm more and more tempted to click on things, even though I know they're advertisements. And, I think that people really work hard to make good advertising and make it targeted to you. So I think it's just good to be conscious of the fact that you're probably seeing a lot of advertising if you're online.
Yeah, exactly. All those blooming cookies. But anyway, let's not talk about the advertising cookies. So a question that has come in on the chat, which I guess I've experienced as well. But how do you deal with the guilt of non-productive days? So you pick up a new system, you're trying to follow it, and then all of a sudden you give up for a couple of days, and you feel really guilty. How do you? What's your experience of that, and how do you get kind of back on the horse as soon as possible?
I guess one is I rely heavily on routines. So I have a morning routine that's actually written out that I follow, and an evening routine that's written out. And it's easier when you have something to go back to, as opposed to if you don't have that. I think it would be harder to get back to any sort of habit you're trying to build if you don't have kind of a set routine already. Um, And I also think taking a long-term view of things helps. That, like, you don't change your life overnight. It takes a few or many tries, and that each time you fall off and get back on, you're getting a little bit closer to the end goal, which is staying consistent, most of the time. And even David Allen even says that, hey, look, sometimes I get out of control and I have to kind of go in and do a cleanup and get back on it. So I don't think you have to be perfect every day. It's just about like doing most of the stuff most of the time, and enough to make your life, satisfying to you.
Yeah, because I think from my experience, there's been certain time, and David Allen does talk about it in his book, where you're working on a project and you know what you need to do, but then ultimately it gets to a kind of a crescendo of work and priorities and demand and stress. But it takes it generally it's when that stress occurs, that you then go back to these sorts of basic tips about writing things down, prioritizing them, what's the next action. But actually, if you keep them up front rather than waiting for it to kind of get over the hill and you're overstressed, that tends to help. But we all have good days and bad days, don't we? In whatever method we're following. And like you said earlier, there's no particular tool needed for this. I know you do a lot of stuff on OneNote, but I guess you can follow this manually if you wanted to, if you wanted to do it in a notepad.
Yeah, definitely. And some like my system, at some point I want to kind of talk about all the tools I use, because it's kind of like squished together, because some of the tools I started using like a long time ago, and they just work and there's no reason to switch. So I don't want to create upheaval and learn a whole new thing just so I'm on one system. So I use quite a few different things, and it works. It's fine. It might not be Pinterest worthy, but it works.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not probably the best person on OneNote just yet, but even then, now and again, sometimes it's better to write it down. I guess the system, you don't have to capture it in the same place depending where you are. It might be paper because you might be out and about, or it might be OneNote because I guess there's different capture sources based on the context that you're in at that time. Is that right?
Yes, that's 100% true. And I think the one underlying thing is to just always have a capture tool, so that you're not trying to remember something. Because I'll tell you, like when I'm out socially and someone mentions something, it will like sit in my brain almost to the point that I can't even be fully present in the conversation until I can just take a second and write it down. And I have some pretty, I usually use my phone, and there's a OneNote badge I have on my phone that just floats, and I just tap the button. It creates a quick note, and I can, write two or three words down, and then it immediately frees up my brain. I can go back and be fully present. But yeah, you can capture all over the place. We have all these different inboxes already, like email, voicemail, text messages, Teams messages, your postal mail, and then, who knows where else. Like it just depends on the person, but you can capture, wherever, as long as you have a designated routine to get those capture points emptied.
Great. Okay, well, I think we're coming up to we've answered the questions that have come in onto the chat. So thanks for your time. I guess.
So thank you for inviting and hosting me today. I have enjoyed my time so much. It's so much fun to talk with people about this. And I also really appreciate all the other people who were involved with putting this day together.
Great. Okay, thanks, Michelle. Thanks again for attending, and we'll speak soon at your live stream next Tuesday.
Yeah, that'll be great.
Okay. Bye. Bye. Bye.
So that's it for the introduction. I hope you enjoyed it, and maybe it sparked some interest in the Getting Things Done system. If you're interested in having a talk like this for your group, just let me know by filling out the contact form in the description below. And if you like this video, please hit the thumbs up button to let YouTube know. And if you want to see more content around getting things done, Microsoft OneNote tutorials, as well as content on personal organization and goal setting, please consider subscribing. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great day. Bye-bye.